What just leaked from Ferrari could turn Lewis Hamilton's entire F1 future upside down, and it's bigger than anyone expected. Stay tuned, because what you're about to hear might change the championship race forever. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Lewis Hamilton's tenure in Ferrari Red, once painted as the ultimate fairy tale chapter in an already legendary career, has swerved into an unexpectedly volatile and unpredictable narrative, now intensified by revelations of a secretive contractual escape clause that has stunned even seasoned Formula One insiders. Whispers within the paddock have grown into a deafening murmur after it emerged that the seven-time world champion has secured an extraordinarily rare, entirely self-governing exit option, one that places the fate of his Ferrari future entirely in his own hands. This discreet mechanism would allow him to walk away from Maranello at the close of his second contracted year, a window that conveniently aligns with the conclusion of the debut season under the sweeping 2026 technical regulations. The implication is seismic. Hamilton, without needing team consent or external negotiation, could unilaterally end what was once hailed as the most sensational driver signing in modern motorsport history. Such a revelation has detonated a fresh wave of speculation, not just about whether Hamilton's patience will stretch into the 2027 campaign, but whether he might decide, should Ferrari stumble in delivering a truly championship-capable machine for the dawn of the new regulatory era, to sever ties far earlier than even his most skeptical critics anticipated. The enormity of Hamilton's arrival in Maranello cannot be overstated. It wasn't merely a high-profile transfer. It was the collision of two global icons, a union of a driver whose name is etched into the sports record books with a team whose legacy is synonymous with Formula One itself. The sheer theater of it recalled the shockwaves from his 2013 switch from McLaren to Mercedes, a move that at the time drew its own chorus of doubt and intrigue. But unlike that leap, which swiftly transformed into an era-defining dynasty, this latest chapter has so far lacked the triumphant crescendo many envisioned. The hype that accompanied his signing was relentless. Media narratives, fan expectations, and even internal Ferrari optimism were at fever pitch. Supporters imagined a resurgence so powerful that it would reframe Ferrari's modern identity, placing them once again at the sharp end of the championship fight. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Yet reality, at least in these formative stages, has proven more stubborn and far less romantic. The SF25, Ferrari's weapon for Hamilton's debut season in red, has shown flashes of potential but has been plagued by a maddening inconsistency. On certain weekends, Hamilton has been able to wrestle the car into contention, sometimes even pushing for podiums against the likes of Red Bull and McLaren. But those glimmers have been offset by frustrating dips in competitiveness, races where the raw pace simply vanishes into the ether without warning. It's not a catastrophic collapse, the team is far from a backmarker, but the pattern is unsettling, a constant cycle of promise and disappointment, with no single technical flaw that can be cleanly identified and eradicated. This elusive performance shortfall has become the great enigma of Hamilton's Ferrari experience. Even with the much-heralded introduction of a redesigned rear suspension, an upgrade many within Maranello touted as the breakthrough that would close the gap to the front, the tangible gains have been negligible. Both Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, despite their vastly different driving styles, have reported eerily similar feedback. The car feels marginally different, but the stopwatch shows little evidence of genuine progress. Engineers, despite countless hours in the simulator and wind tunnel, are left perplexed, unable to pinpoint whether the deficit lies in aerodynamic inefficiency, mechanical balance, tire management, or an insidious combination of all three. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. For Hamilton, this uncertainty is perhaps the most corrosive element. A driver of his caliber thrives on clarity, on understanding where the battle is being lost and how to correct it. Instead, he faces the unsettling reality that even when solutions are implemented, they fail to manifest in measurable improvement. It is a scenario that gnaws at him both professionally and personally, the fear that he may be locked into a cycle of hope and disillusionment, all while the remaining years of his career edge closer to their twilight. And now, with this newfound contractual autonomy, the choice of whether to continue the Ferrari experiment or to pivot towards an entirely different challenge rests solely in his hands. The next 18 months could therefore decide not only the fate of Hamilton's partnership with the Scuderia, but potentially the closing act of one of Formula One's most illustrious careers. Ferrari now finds itself standing at a pivotal crossroads, one of the most defining moments in its modern Formula One history. The year 2026 looms like a colossal wave on the horizon, bringing with it a complete overhaul of technical regulations that will reset the competitive order of the grid. Every team will face the challenge of interpreting these rules to unlock performance, but for Ferrari, the stakes are amplified beyond measure. They are not just trying to keep pace, they are fighting to reclaim their identity as a team that once defined dominance in motorsport. For them, the margin for error is non-existent. From the very first bolt tightened on the 2026 car, from the earliest conceptual drawings to the aerodynamic philosophy underpinning the chassis, every decision must be flawless. A single misstep could condemn them to years of playing catch-up, especially against a rejuvenated Mercedes with renewed technical firepower, a McLaren riding a wave of upward momentum and youthful energy, and an Aston Martin that continues to surprise with ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a fearless approach to strategy and innovation. For Lewis Hamilton, the implications are enormous. His career is now in a phase where every season counts, where each race is measured not just in points, but in opportunities to add to an already monumental legacy. Should Ferrari stumble during this crucial transitional phase, the consequences would reverberate far beyond a single disappointing campaign. Lost championships are only part of the equation. The real danger lies in eroding Hamilton's trust in Ferrari's long-term vision and its capacity to execute it. The early months of his tenure have already tested his patience. Ambitious words and heavy investment have, so far, not consistently translated into a car capable of dominating Sundays. If that pattern persists, the question will not be whether Hamilton can endure the challenge, but whether he will want to. The recent leak reported by La Gazzetta dello Sport offers a revealing glimpse into the inner workings of the relationship between Hamilton and Ferrari's top brass. It appears that Ferrari's recruitment of the seven-time world champion was not merely a contractual transaction, but a carefully orchestrated courtship. The two-year deal, lavish in both financial terms and personal considerations, was designed to give Hamilton more than just a seat in one of the most iconic machines in sport. It was meant to provide him with a genuine platform to rediscover the razor-sharp instincts and supreme confidence that defined his greatest triumphs. Behind the scenes, Ferrari chairman John Elkann has reportedly taken a hands-on approach, personally ensuring that Hamilton feels supported at every juncture, from providing him access to cutting-edge simulator programs to granting him a direct voice in shaping the technical direction of the team. Yet, buried within the fine print of that agreement lies a detail that shifts the balance of power almost entirely into Hamilton's corner. The exit clause is not a mutual decision, nor is it contingent on performance metrics agreed upon by both parties. It is, quite simply, at Hamilton's sole discretion. This means that after the initial two-year term, the choice to continue or walk away rests entirely with him. Ferrari cannot compel him to stay, they can only hope that their performance convinces him to. And that is where the looming pressure becomes suffocating for Maranello. If the 2025 season unfolds as a litany of frustrations, botched upgrade packages that fail to deliver lap time gains, strategic miscalculations that cost podiums, and persistent race pace deficiencies that leave them trailing behind the frontrunners, Hamilton can, with a single decision, bring the partnership to an abrupt and definitive end. For Hamilton, this is not merely a safety net. It is a statement of control, a declaration that he will not allow the twilight years of his career to be spent in perpetual rebuilding cycles with no tangible results. For Ferrari, it is both a challenge and a countdown. They must prove, and prove quickly, that they are capable of giving Hamilton not just a competitive car, but a winning one. Every upgrade, every strategic call, every piece of development between now and the 2026 reset will be scrutinized through this lens. The next 18 months will determine whether this union becomes one of Formula One's great redemption stories, or yet another cautionary tale of promise unfulfilled. Elkann's backing of Lewis Hamilton extends far beyond a simple gesture of goodwill or ceremonial endorsement. It represents a deliberate and meticulously calculated decision rooted in both commercial strategy and competitive ambition. According to persistent reports in the Italian press, this move is not just about adding another world-class driver to Ferrari's roster. It is about leveraging Hamilton's unique position as a once-in-a-generation figure whose influence transcends motorsport entirely. Hamilton is not merely a man who races cars. He is a global cultural figure, a marketing powerhouse, a fashion and lifestyle trendsetter, and the most statistically accomplished driver Formula One has ever produced. His signing was as much a masterstroke in brand positioning and global exposure as it was a bet on sporting performance, and it is clear that Ferrari sees in him a vehicle for elevating the team's image on the world stage, capturing markets and demographics that extend far beyond the traditional F1 audience. For Ferrari, the challenge and opportunity lies in ensuring that the enormous investment in Hamilton pays dividends, not just on the track but in reinforcing the team's prestige and competitive reputation. That means creating an environment where Hamilton's exceptional skill, experience, and relentless pursuit of perfection are met with equal measures of engineering innovation, strategic clarity, and institutional trust. Elkann understands that the worst possible outcome would be for the public and media to perceive that Ferrari, despite signing one of the most celebrated drivers in history, failed to provide him with the machinery and support necessary to compete for championships. Such a scenario would not just be a sporting disappointment, it would be a damaging blow to Ferrari's global reputation, undermining the very narrative his signing was meant to create. This awareness appears to fuel Elkann's unwavering determination, a resolve that is now manifesting in the form of Hamilton being granted unprecedented influence over the direction of Ferrari's next-generation cars, particularly the all-important 2026 machine that will debut under the radically different regulations. Early indicators already point toward Hamilton's fingerprints being all over the development of that car. Although both he and Charles Leclerc share an aversion to excessive understeer, a trait that can sap confidence on corner entry and slow lap times, their preferences diverge in a key area: rear-end stability. Hamilton, drawing on his years of experience fine-tuning cars at the very top of the sport, has consistently leaned toward setups that offer a more planted and predictable rear, allowing him to commit aggressively under braking and carry speed through high-load corners without fear of the back stepping out unexpectedly. Leclerc, by contrast, while also valuing balance, tends to accept a slightly more responsive but less stable rear in exchange for sharper turn-in and rotation at corner entry. This difference, though subtle to the casual observer, can have far-reaching consequences when a team commits to a particular design philosophy for its chassis and aerodynamics. If the 2026 Ferrari gravitates more toward Hamilton's style, which current whispers from Maranello suggest is increasingly likely, it could represent a significant shift in the car's overall character. Such a change would not only give Hamilton the comfort and confidence to extract maximum performance, but could also force Leclerc into a period of adjustment, potentially challenging his natural driving rhythm. This in turn could create a fascinating and potentially combustible dynamic within the team. On one hand, a car tailored to Hamilton might finally unlock the full extent of his abilities in red, allowing him to chase an 8th world title with a kind of precision and consistency that defined his peak years at Mercedes. On the other, it risks unsettling the delicate balance of intra-team competition, particularly if Leclerc feels his own preferences have been sidelined in favor of a teammate whose arrival has already reshaped the political and technical landscape of Ferrari. Such a scenario could amplify the stakes of every qualifying session, every strategy call, and every on-track battle between the two drivers. In a sport where tenths of a second can separate glory from defeat, even a marginal shift toward one driver's comfort zone can alter the balance of power. For Hamilton, the message is clear: Ferrari is listening to him, trusting his input, and perhaps more importantly, building around him. For Leclerc, it could be a subtle but unmistakable reminder that the hierarchy within the team may be evolving. And for Elkann, it is the execution of a high-risk, high-reward gamble, one that, if successful, could redefine Ferrari's modern era, but if it fails, could leave the team facing not just sporting disappointment, but the uncomfortable glare of global scrutiny. Hamilton has been uncharacteristically open in acknowledging just how complex and, at times, frustrating it has been to adapt himself to a car whose core philosophy, mechanical balance, and aerodynamic behavior have been shaped almost entirely by years of Charles Leclerc's influence and driving feedback. Since his arrival at Ferrari, he has walked into an environment where the car's fundamental handling traits, from how the rear rotates under braking to the way the front end responds to turn-in, are instinctively familiar to Leclerc but feel subtly alien to him. The Monegasque, having forged an almost symbiotic connection with Ferrari's engineers since 2019, knows exactly how to extract performance from a chassis that has evolved with his preferences in mind, while Hamilton has been forced to navigate a steep learning curve, often feeling like he's playing catch-up in a car that doesn't fully align with his natural style. In pursuit of solutions, Hamilton has pushed the technical team to test a broad spectrum of experimental setups, some aggressive and unconventional, others subtle and methodical, attempting to bend the SF's performance characteristics closer to what he instinctively trusts. Yet, after exhaustive trial and error, he has repeatedly found himself returning to Leclerc's baseline configuration, not because it feels perfect in his hands, but because it remains the most functional platform available to him under current design constraints. It is a compromise, a pragmatic acknowledgement that in this transitional period, adaptation is the only viable path to staying competitive. Now his eyes are set firmly on the long game, with the 2026 car looming as a pivotal moment not only for his Ferrari career but for the team's competitive trajectory. Hamilton has made it abundantly clear in private briefings and public hints that the next-generation Ferrari must carry the hallmarks of his own driving DNA: sharper steering response, more predictable mid-corner behavior, and a chassis that communicates more faithfully under heavy braking. This is not mere wishful thinking, it is a strategic demand, one he intends to push through the internal development corridors at Maranello with all the weight of his reputation and technical insight. When he talks about the 2026 Challenger having more of my DNA, it is not a throwaway soundbite for the media. It is a declaration that he intends to leave an indelible imprint on the machine's conception, a car that feels like an extension of his instincts rather than an apparatus he must wrestle into submission. However, the stakes surrounding that project could not be higher. Ferrari's 2026 promises are grand, painted in the language of revolution rather than evolution, but Hamilton knows better than most how hollow such projections can become when the rubber meets the tarmac. If the new regulations come into play and the Maranello squad once again fails to deliver a package capable of consistent title contention, the contractual escape hatch built into his deal is not just a hypothetical safeguard. It becomes a potential ignition point for one of the most sensational high-profile divorces in modern Formula One. The political, sporting, and media shockwaves from such a split would be seismic. For Ferrari, losing Hamilton after only 2 seasons would be more than a performance setback. It would be a public relations disaster of historic proportions, an admission that even the prestige, mystique, and heritage of the prancing horse are not enough to keep one of the sport's most decorated drivers committed. It would broadcast a sobering message across the paddock. If a record-breaking multiple-time world champion, seduced by the romance of Ferrari's red, could not see a credible long-term path to championships, why should any other elite driver believe otherwise? In such a scenario, Ferrari's recruitment power would be undermined, their image dented, and their competitors emboldened, all while the legend of Hamilton's career added another dramatic, headline-dominating chapter to an already extraordinary legacy. For Lewis Hamilton, the activation of that exit clause would not merely be a contractual maneuver, it would almost certainly be interpreted as a symbolic closing chapter in one of the most celebrated and scrutinized careers in the history of Formula One. In the eyes of fans, pundits, and perhaps even Hamilton himself, such a move would represent a quiet resignation from the sharp edge of competition, signaling not just a step back from the frontline battles for victories and championships, but a definitive acknowledgement that his era as a relentless title contender had reached its twilight. While walking away under his own terms would offer him the comfort of controlling his own narrative, avoiding the ignominy of being sidelined by declining performance, team politics, or a non-renewal decision made by Ferrari, it would nevertheless carry an air of anticlimax. This is a driver whose story has been defined by epic comebacks, against the odds triumphs, and a career-long defiance of the idea that the script is already written. Yet, there is an almost haunting thought that lingers in the background. Had Hamilton, back in those final days at Mercedes, foreseen that within just 2 seasons in the iconic red he might be weighing the possibility of retirement, would he have taken the plunge at all? Or would the promise of reinvention at Maranello have been overshadowed by the lurking prospect of a farewell that felt premature, almost abrupt compared to the grandeur of his legend? Complicating this entire scenario is the increasingly tantalizing set of whispers seeping out of Ferrari's inner sanctum regarding their early and aggressive push on the 2026 car, an effort that, intriguingly, is being tailored with Hamilton's driving style at the very core of its design philosophy. Behind closed doors, engineers are said to be experimenting with unconventional battery configurations, not merely tweaking existing layouts but fundamentally rethinking how the car stores and deploys energy during a race. The objective, at least according to those with insight into the project, is to give Hamilton a chassis and power unit balance that will feel more intuitive to him, allowing sharper rotation in mid-speed corners, improved stability under braking, and an almost instinctive connection between throttle input and power delivery. Yet this comes with a glaring trade-off. The chosen design reportedly carries a weight penalty, and in a sport where every kilogram can mean tenths of a second per lap, that extra mass could translate into vulnerabilities during certain high-stakes moments. In particular, the risk lies in energy deployment management, over the course of a long straight, or in the split-second window needed to complete a decisive overtake, the car might lack that extra punch of electrical boost. Ferrari's leadership appears willing to accept that gamble, banking on the belief that Hamilton's extraordinary racecraft, coupled with a car that feels surgically precise through technical sectors, will more than offset the occasional shortfall in raw straight-line acceleration. It is, in many ways, a philosophical bet as much as a technical one. The idea that tailoring the machine to the man could yield greater rewards than chasing purely theoretical performance numbers. And yet, overshadowing every design decision, every strategic gamble, is a fact that Hamilton cannot escape. He is not the only prized asset in Ferrari's stable. Charles Leclerc, the Monégasque star who has weathered the turbulent tides of the Scuderia's fortunes, remains the emotional heartbeat of the team for many inside Maranello. To the engineers who have grown alongside him, to the mechanics who have seen him deliver miracles in underperforming machinery, and to the tifosi who have chanted his name through seasons of frustration, Leclerc is the golden thread tying the present to a hoped-for future. His loyalty has been unwavering, his patience tested but never broken, and within Ferrari's political labyrinth, there is a powerful undercurrent that views him as the rightful heir, the man to finally end the championship drought that has stretched uncomfortably since Kimi Räikkönen's 2007 triumph. Should the 2026 regulations swing in Ferrari's favor, and should Leclerc find himself with machinery capable of consistently fighting at the front, there is little reason to doubt his ability to mount a serious, sustained title challenge. In such a reality, the delicate balance between two drivers of immense stature could tip into something far more volatile. Hamilton, arriving with the aura of a seven-time world champion and the global fame that comes with it, would find himself shoulder to shoulder, and perhaps wheel to wheel, with a man whose rise would be celebrated as a homegrown dream fulfilled. What begins as professional rivalry could, under the pressure of championship contention, ferment into something sharper, a duel that bleeds into the political corridors of the team and forces the Scuderia's leadership into impossible choices about where to place its faith and resources. It would not be without precedent. Formula One is littered with tales of partnerships turned poisonous, of garages split by competing allegiances, of championship dreams derailed by internecine warfare. The current McLaren pairing, already showing signs of a combustible dynamic, would serve as a cautionary parallel. But in Ferrari's case, the stakes would be even higher, the scrutiny even more intense, the fallout potentially seismic. In that environment, Hamilton would be forced to ask himself a question perhaps more challenging than any he has faced on track. Is it worth staying in a team that could so quickly transform from a promised land into hostile territory, where every battle won risks deepening the fracture, and every battle lost chips away at the very legacy he sought to protect? In the current atmosphere surrounding the Formula One paddock, the uncertainty over Lewis Hamilton's future with Ferrari hangs heavy, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon, impossible to ignore yet impossible to predict with certainty. Conversations in the team garages, whispers among rival engineers, and speculation from the media all circle back to the same unresolved dilemma, a question that has become both the most captivating and the most unsettling narrative of the season. The central issue revolves around whether Hamilton, a driver whose career has been defined by an uncompromising pursuit of excellence and a relentless hunger for championships, will ultimately decide to exercise the escape clause embedded in his contract should Ferrari's grand promises fail to materialize into the level of performance he demands. For Hamilton, this is not merely about numbers on a scoreboard or the cold mathematics of championship points. It is about trust, about the belief that the Scuderia can not only match his ambitions but exceed them, crafting machinery capable of delivering results against the most formidable competition in the modern era of the sport. Behind closed doors, both sides are engaged in a delicate dance, Ferrari working tirelessly to translate Hamilton's feedback into tangible improvements on the car's aerodynamics, power unit reliability, and race day strategy execution, while Hamilton himself is weighing every nuance of progress, monitoring whether the team's actions truly align with the words that first lured him away from Mercedes. There is an unspoken tension in every technical briefing, in every post-race debrief, as both parties know that their collaboration is at a crossroads that could define careers. Should Ferrari falter, the escape clause becomes more than a contractual formality. It transforms into an open door toward other opportunities, and with Hamilton's stature, those opportunities would be abundant, with top teams and even ambitious new entrants potentially ready to build their future projects around him. Yet, on the other side of the equation, Ferrari's engineers and leadership remain convinced that their 18-month roadmap, one heavily influenced by Hamilton's vision and tailored to suit his unique driving style, will produce a car not only capable of challenging Red Bull, Mercedes, and McLaren, but of dominating them. The stakes could not be higher. This is not just another driver-team relationship under scrutiny, it is a collision of two legendary legacies, each with everything to gain and just as much to lose. For Hamilton, the next year and a half may represent his final, most decisive chance to add another championship, or even multiple championships, to his record, cementing a legacy that could become almost untouchable for future generations. For Ferrari, the period ahead will determine whether they can reclaim their identity as a team of innovation, dominance, and glory, or whether they will remain trapped in a cycle of near misses and unfulfilled promises. Every race, every upgrade, every strategic gamble over the next 18 months will be magnified under the relentless glare of global attention, with the smallest misstep potentially tipping the balance toward a split that would send shockwaves through the sport. If Hamilton stays and the project succeeds, it could usher in a golden era for both driver and team, a fusion of talent, experience, and engineering prowess that reshapes the competitive landscape for years. But if the vision unravels, if technical failures or strategic blunders chip away at mutual confidence, then history may remember this chapter not as a triumph but as a cautionary tale. The decisions, actions, and results between now and the end of that 18-month window will not simply influence race wins or championship standings. They will shape the very narrative of Hamilton's career and define Ferrari's reputation deep into the next decade, leaving a legacy that will be dissected, debated, and immortalized in the annals of Formula One lore.